Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday to you. Today is October the 9th, 2017, and some of the world is celebrating Christopher Columbus. Me, on the other hand, not so much. I find it hard to celebrate somebody who actually went across the ocean, not discovered anything. And how do you discover something that was already there and thriving, first and foremost? Because he didn't come to America. He never made it to North America. He settled he landed in the Caribbean islands, the Bahamas, and Hispaniola, where there were already civilizations thriving there. So, of course, he discovered something. It was new to him, but it wasn't new to the people that are already there. So that's the first part. The second part is he tried to subjugate these people. He actually did. Went back. He took a couple of slaves, a couple of Indians, took them back to King Ferdinand in Spain, Queen Isabella. They sent back more ships, more troops because they wanted more gold. It was all about greed. That's a typical theme in Europe and most of the white-dominated world. And if you don't have to believe me, you can do your own research, but you already know throughout most of modern history that the white man, for lack of better words, Anglo-Saxons, Europeans, whatever, the Spanish, those people in that geographical era we call Europeans. So, and that later translated over into America as the people from Europe migrated here, and the English left Britain to come to America. So those same ideology, the same people, the same mindset came here as well. So, but let me back up to Christopher Columbus. He was actually put on trial and jailed by King Ferdinand because he actually treated the Taino Indians so badly over there in the Caribbean, the people that he tried to subjugate and raped and pillaged them, as well as all the other islands that he invaded. So somehow white folks like to translate aggression and power into might. And I understand in history, you've had battles and wars fought with different people, even in the African continent. We'll get to that in a second. It's apparent that war is just part of man's makeup for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's survival of the fittest, but doesn't necessarily make it right. But in any case, there's no reason to celebrate Christopher Columbus, especially somebody who was put on trial for the atrocities that he committed, and he never set foot in North America. So he did not discover North America, and it'd be hard for anybody to lay claim to that because there was already indigenous people here thriving, millions of Indians, as we call them, Native Americans, on this country, who were subsequently conquered, and acts of genocide were committed against them to almost wipe them off the face of the planet. And I believe to this day there's probably 50,000 something Native Americans still left in America. It's pretty damn sad. But this is the sad history of the world, and primarily, of America. The greatest land ever stole, and it's what we're living in today. So a couple things going on today. We got the Dove commercial with the three women taking off their shirts, and I watched the Dove commercial. The first one's a black woman. She pulls her shirt up, and there's a white woman doing the same thing after that. So it looks like she pulled her shirt off and became a white woman. And then I believe another woman of color after that. But the fact is, Dove is owned by Unilever, which is a European company, which is headquartered out of the UK, and is made up of a Dutch conglomerate and some other companies. Europeans do not have a great track record with people of color either, especially modern day Europeans. So they're apologizing for the commercial, but I mean, they say they missed the mark. So I mean, you can do better than saying you missed the mark. But England is notorious for, they don't have such a great track record either. There wasn't slavery like we endured here in America, but they still treat black citizens in America, especially Jamaican people of Jamaican descent. They treat them very harshly, and almost like second-class citizens in Europe. So, and again, you all can Google that and find that out for yourselves if you don't believe me on that. So the point is that slavery has been so divisive and so devastating in America, not only to the people of African descent, but the people who were not, in a way that our history reflects this broad spectrum of greatness and might on the side of white folks and civilized people, as you will, and it reflects the exact opposite of Africans who came here and enslaved against their will, and subsequently treated in a unhumane fashion that you wouldn't even today. If you did it to a dog, people would be going to jail, serving time. So the optics in America and about people of color, we're fighting this war because our history is lost. It's lost from the connection from Africa to America, and in between something happened where the darker your skin, the more bad you were and more terrible you were. So there's this thing called the paper bag test in America, and it was used against my ancestors. My mother, in fact, and father had to go by this test at certain things to apply for a job, where they would take a brown paper bag, and if you were darker than a brown paper bag, you wouldn't get this job. You know, things like that are relevant, and they're very near. So this Unilever thing, this Dove thing, it hits home with a lot of people. And since that's a company out of Britain, you would think that they would do market research first before they put a commercial on. So it is insensitive. And am I saying we're too sensitive to take any criticism? Listen, black people have suffered enough. We don't deserve, and we're not standing for any more insensitivity about anything. We're not standing for it. As we see this thing going on with the flag and Colin Kaepernick and all the stuff that's been caused, not by his actions, because you all are getting upset because he decided not to stand up and while the national anthem was playing. Oh, by the way, the national anthem was written by a former slave owner, Francis Scott Key, and the song's lyrics are actually celebrating the death of Africans, enslaved people fighting for the freedom. So yet again, white Americans love to raise their flag and talk about how patriotic they are. But the whole protest was about black men being unjustly killed, unarmed black men, by police officers in America, which again comes right out of slavery. The police departments began by slave patrollers out in America going out and recovering runaway slaves, basically people who were trying to gain freedom to partake in this American dream that we were not allowed to partake in. So, this whole thing about optics is very huge, and there's a battle going on, and I'm determined to win it, because again, you set yourself in a positive light, you're going to think positive about yourself, your family will think positive, and your friends, and so on and so on and so on. So it's been nothing but negativity, and we have smashed down all the positive contributions of Americans and of African Americans in our American history. And we talk about reparations, which needs to happen, and I think a big way for that to start to happen is to begin to change our history books to reflect the true contribution of black people in America, and to reflect and not whitewash the atrocities that have happened. So there's a lot going on in the world right now. We talk about the Unilever thing briefly, and how Africa became subjugated and divided. Well, in I think 1941 or so, but maybe 1940, the Berlin Conference, where the European powers came together and they decided which countries were going to take over Africa and what part they were going to get. And that's what they did. They went in and they divided up, sliced up Africa, and Germany took one part, England took another part, France took another part, Belgium took another part, and they colonized the whole continent of Africa. And all these people, except for a few, it's not like they didn't fight back, but a few actually never were colonized. I believe two. One was Ethiopia, was never colonized, and I forget the other country. But the fact is, Africa was raped and pillaged for its resources, its people, number one, for the slave labor and all the resources. So you look at all these European countries that are gaining power, that have gained power from either enslavement or from stealing the resources from other countries. It's pretty common in America. That's what happened as well. So you have all these companies now that run the world and basically make this machine go around, run by white men who became wealthy off the backs of slave labor and stolen resources. That's a fact. Now, I don't know why people feel proud about that, or even don't even see the connection between how that's happened today, where if again we lift up one group of people and continue to lift them up and edify them, but the other group, it just gets slandered and pushed down to the bottom of the pile. So the rest of us start to regain our knowledge and sense of self and start to fight and climb the ladder, not only in the corporate world, but just in the historical sense of there is a connection with our ancestors. There is a connection with us, and we have a rightful place in this world. And it's been denied from us for years, but we are no longer sitting back and quietly accepting what's given to us. We're demanding our rights, and we're demanding our respect, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you can either get on board, recognize what's going on, and treat your fellow humans with dignity, and get to know your fellow neighbors, whether you're in Europe or not. But people with skin like mine and in between and darker, we ain't nothing to be afraid of. Nothing to be afraid of. People just like you. Have families just like you do. Have dreams and goals just like you do. Have a history just like you do. So why not embrace, as God says, love your neighbor? But y'all forgot that part, huh?